Love, love, love everybody. I love that song. Thank you, highest good. And it's so beautiful and so perfect because love everybody even when you're loving when it's hard to do. And sometimes it feels that way, right? We're going to talk about that this morning. And a sneak preview, actually. We're actually going to be doing a 3-part series, which today is number 1. So we're going to be back the next 2 Sundays as well. So it's going to kind of link together and you'll kind of get what that theme is about. Thank you. Glad you applauded instead of, oh no. We'll see. We'll see in a half hour, right? You know, this series that we're going to be doing is basically a theme that Mary Beth and I are very passionate about. And it's based on the vision statement of a church that we're connected with out in Los Angeles called Global Truth Center. And the minister there, Dr. James Mellon, is a very good friend of ours. Also a co-member and associate member along with us of Affiliated New Thought Network. And we both started our ministries back in California about 25 years ago, around the same time. And the other part about it is we still study with James. In fact, we, over the last couple of years, started studying with him because he's really a great light, and I'll say on the leading edge of bringing together, let's just say traditional New Thought as we know it, unity, religious science, and divine science, and all the other New Thought teachings, and bringing them up to a more current level and integrating it with quantum physics. He's kind of been on the cutting edge of that. So we've been studying a lot with James over the last couple of years. Could we put the next slide up, Cindy? So this is his vision statement. Love only, forgive everything, and remember who you are. Love only, forgive everything, and remember who you are. Powerful, aren't they? Dr. James believes that when we live our lives from a place of love only, forgive everything, and remember who you are, we become an energetic match, in his words, to everything that we want that already exists in the quantum field. Already exists in the quantum field. So we're matching our energetics to it, if you will. In my own words, it's sort of like I'm aligning myself with the vibrations of the universe to allow all the good that surrounds me. I can't go like this because to flow in. Allowing myself to let the energy in this quantum field, which contains infinite possibilities, it's up to me to tap into it and to allow it to flow into my life, right? So is that something you'd like to experience in your life too? Thank you, I'm glad. Because this week we're going to focus on that first part of the vision statement. Next slide, please. The love only part of it. And the title of our talk today is The Courage of Love. And we'll talk about why it takes courage. Maybe after 30 years it takes courage, but actually the truth is, and that's kind of funny, but the truth is every time we have a reaction, we're just saying love, love, love everybody. It's beautiful. I love it. But that takes courage to love sometimes in the midst of every interaction on a global level, and on a one-on-one level with people we're interacting, be it in the groceries line, be it walking down the street, be it watching the news in particular, all those things. And I have to say that if you watched last week's service, if you were present or watched, how many were actually present or watched last week's service? Great. If you didn't, I highly encourage you to watch it because it was just a wonderful experience. It was really something, and it provides a great platform to what we're talking about today. I want to give a shout out to Enoch and his friends who headed up that service. And I know it was very participatory, and some of you were involved with that process. And again, I'll encourage you to take a look at it. But what really touched me during that process, and it was a process that Enoch and his friends did, that they led us to, is they had everyone in the room singing to each other. And I saw a lot of you were involved in that process. And the 2 questions that you sang to each other were this: could you love all that I am? And I love you with all that I am. Could you love all that I am? And I love you with all that I am. That I am that you were talking about, of course, and Enoch mentioned this, is something that came right out of the Old Testament from the prophet Moses when he was told by Spirit, by God within him. That's how I interpret it. God within him said, I am that I am. I am that I am. I am the great that I am. Same for each of you. Who are we? We are God in expression, each and every one of us. We are a unique, individualized expression of God. In other words, there is no separation between any of us, even when it appears that we're separate beings. We're all sitting in our own chairs, right? We're all seemingly in our own bodies, our own skin, but yet we're all connected. We're all one with the same infinite intelligence. Can we have the next slide, please, Cindy? So this idea is supported by quantum physics. This is from the writer and teacher Mel Schwartz, who said that the universe appears to be a thoroughly interconnected whole. Inseparability implies that we are an integral part of everything and everyone. This understanding showers us with meaning, purposeness, and connectiveness. In other words, there's no separation between us, even while on a physical level, there appears to be sometimes. And I think what we're all here to do, we call this teaching metaphysics, beyond physics, right? Beyond the physical. So while we're here, as you've often heard, spiritual beings living a human experience, what we're really here doing and what we do every Sunday morning and what we do in most of our lives, many of us, is to try to see beyond just the conditions and appearances around us. When I love you with all that I am, I'm acknowledging and empowering this understanding that there is no separation. And I can love you first and foremost because I first love myself. So that's the key that's going on here. It's hard for me to love anyone when I'm not loving myself, and sometimes I project that stuff out, if you will, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that, as is Mary Beth. To achieve that love within myself, I have to view love in a different sort of way. Can we have the next slide, please? The spiritual teacher and author Joel Goldsmith stated it like this, up on the screen. He said, love is not a sentimental attachment to mankind. Love is a law. Love is a mode of conduct. Love is an attitude. Love does not come to us. Love is within ourselves. The only truly spiritual life possible is lived by keeping our thoughts and deeds at one ment. I love that word, at one ment. Sounds like atonement, yes? At one ment with the law of love. It must be the love that does unto others as we would have them do unto us. That is real love. This view on love informs my own thinking, but beyond that, it informs my decisions. It informs my actions. That's what I aspire to. Sometimes I forget to have it inform me in that way, but that's the point here. It helps build my awareness of how I'm showing up in doing this thing called life for myself and the world all around us. And let's face it, this world is all about relationships, isn't it? Any types of relationships. Am I treating others the way I wish to be treated? That's the golden rule, right? And it exists in almost every religion, has a version of the golden rule. Am I treating others the way I wish to be treated? And how and where and when am I letting my stuff, I got my stuff, you want to see my stuff? You see it all the time. Some of you do. Mary Beth sees it more than others. And that's the point here. I let my stuff getting in the way of my desire to love others, to express love for myself and express love for others. And that's what you got to experience last week in the service, by the way. But it was in this nice, beautiful, safe cocoon, sanctity, when we were just dealing undisturbed and in a very loving space. The key is what happens when we take it out of here. If I can be aware and get past projecting my own issues I can have a more authentic and loving relationship with you. That's really the bottom line for me. And I believe that this is the work, and it is work, that I'm called upon to do. I believe that's the work that any of us are called to do. All of us are called to do if we choose to answer that call. I had a chance to practice that this week. And of course, having watched that service last week when we were all about love and giving love to other people, I came out of that service saying, well, I'm going to really practice that this week. And it's not new to me. I practiced that a lot, but I was really tuned up to it. And of course, what did the universe do? Threw me an opportunity to really practice it. So this last week, we had a great opportunity to perform with our Sounds Good choir. Some of you might be familiar with that, and I know some of you, well, Rick and Maureen, wherever you are, Rick. Are you in the room, Rick? There's Rick, okay. And Maureen, I don't think she's here today. Actually are in the Sounds Good choir now, and some of you, I see a bunch of you actually came to hear us, so thank you for showing up for us. So it was a great opportunity. It was just we loved it. It was called Summer Rocks. We did some great songs. We had a lot of fun. So earlier in the week, that was on Thursday evening, but earlier in the week, we had our rehearsal, a dress rehearsal. We do that all the time, a few days, 2-3 days before. And when I'm in the dress rehearsal, I'm sitting with the tenors. I'm a tenor, but I'm a kind of a tentative tenor. Is that a musical term, Kevin? A tentative tenor? Tentative singer might be a better word. So I don't want to say I'm not strong, but I'm tentative, right? I can easily be wooed over to an alto or wooed over to a bass, depending on whoever's around me. I don't go to soprano, though. Trust me on that. But I was sitting right in front of a very strong, powerful bass, which is very unusual. That hasn't happened to me. And he was right behind me. And he was right on point, and he was loud. And it got to me. It absolutely got to me. I just was throwing off all over the place. I just almost couldn't deal with. So that unto itself it was an issue, it was a problem, but I took it to the next step. And I found myself getting caught up with resentment and anger towards this person and judgment. I went there. Do you believe that? I actually went there. I did. No, I can't. How is that possible? Possible is we're not going to do shadow work here today, okay? We're not going to go that far, but that's what it's about. And I didn't quite know how to get myself out of this. I felt stuck in it. I mean, when I left there, I was kind of hemming and hawing to Mary Beth. Maybe I could say complaining. But I knew what was going on. I was aware of it, and she pointed it out to me as well, of course, being my loving partner. And it took me some time. I wasn't able to quite shake it off, but I knew I needed to do my work around it. I knew what was going on. I was projecting out, and I just had to get past it before the concert, which was 2 days later. So I said, well, I'm going to do my work around this, and I did. I started really focusing on what's going on with me, what do I need to do here, knowing that there was no one outside of me causing this. This was something going on within me. So what I ended up doing, and this was actually all the way to the morning of the concert, because I knew, what am I going to do when I get there? Should I ask him to move? Well, I can't do that. I have to be a nice guy about this, right? I have to figure out. So I said, you know what? I'm turning this over to Spirit. I'm going to let go and let God, because I already know it's not about him. It's never about anything out there. This was about something in here. And I let go. I said, I'm turning this over to God. Whatever works out tonight is going to work out the way it works out. So we arrived for the concert. And would you know, we get up to the spot where I was sitting before, that same area, and they had run out of chairs. And what the concert director did is he brought over a couple more chairs, and he seated me back a couple rows, so I was now with the other tenors. And this other person was no longer in front of me. And on top of it, a couple minutes later, while the concert, we were doing our warm-up, we do a rehearsal before, a full rehearsal, and I saw this man get up and go down a few rows in front of us. There's a man who has some disabilities. He has real problems. And he went down, this man went down, the man that I had held in resentment went down and spent at least 5 to 10 minutes, even while we were starting to rehearse, just helping this man, just giving him himself. And I said, what a blessing. All I needed to do was let go and let God and get out of the way, and I was able to see the good in him. I was able to see the loving part of him and send him love and be in love myself. Could we have next slide, please, Cindy? It's a wonderful mystic and a monk named Anthony de Mello, and he wrote this: if it is love that you truly desire, then set out at once on the task of seeing. And as you do this, the hard protective shell around your heart will soften and melt, and your heart will come alive with sensitivity and responsiveness. The darkness in your eyes will be dispelled, and your vision will become clear and penetrating, and you know at last what love is. That's the work that we're called upon to do if we want to really give and receive love in our lives. Anthony de Mello goes on to say more. The next slide, please. Every time you find yourself irritated or angry with someone, now buckle in for this, every time you find yourself irritated or angry at someone, the one to look at is not that person but yourself. The question to ask is not, what's wrong with that person, but what does this irritation tell me about myself? Every time. And how do you know you're there? You can feel it. Feel it in your speech, feel it differently, but pay attention to your emotions. That's what I do. Am I feeling something in my gut? Am I feeling angry? Am I feeling irritated? And for me, it's pretty clear when I do. This is not often easy for me, but the work is well worth it. It opens up a pathway to greater love in myself and for others. And Mary Haskell, who was a friend and collaborator with Khalil Gibran, once said this: I realized that all the trouble I ever had about you came from some smallness or fear within myself. And all this takes on your part is two things. It takes willingness to change, and Cindy, next slide, please. Courage.
Yeah, he leaves me with courage. Okay. Thank you, dear. Yeah, we've been working on this. We call them the twofers. And it's very funny. Michael and I actually started a church, and then we took over a church over 15 years span. And in both churches, periodically, people would call us Michael Beth because we're sort of like... But we do have very different ideas on things, but we really did come together on this one. We realized we had 3 weeks, and we wanted to have the continuity. And we have really been working with that magnificent vision statement that Michael showed you, love only, forgive everyone, and remember who you are. That is really aspirational. There's another Unity Church out in Tucson who is using the same one. And it's really a code for life, really, and how to work on how to measure up to that. But when I saw the 3 aspects of that, what I really thought about was the work of Brené Brown. I think a lot of you may know the work of Brené Brown. She burst on the scene back in 2010. She is a researcher, and by trade, she is a shame researcher. And she got her toehold through Oprah and also through doing TED Talks. And one of the things that she talked about was how there are 3, in her research, and the definition of research I wrote down. Research is the study of phenomena for the explicit reason to control and predict. And so her work is always about she says she uses a measuring stick, tries to nail everything down. Well, good luck trying to nail down love, right? Encourage the courage to love, because sometimes the ideas of words courage and love seem like oxymoronic. They don't quite go together. And, she did this same work we did this week, which is it's easy to love the people who are lovable. Have you noticed? I mean, no problem there. We got that one down. That, check that box. But there's a few of them out there that we have a bit of trouble with, and ironically, I think some of them have trouble with us. I remember the first time somebody suggested to me that perhaps there might be somebody out there doing therapy about me. And I went, oh, that's... that was humbling. But what Brene discovered in the work that she was doing through the research of trying to understand people, she came down to qualities that she realized were 3 qualities that were shared by people who she could identify as living wholeheartedly. And let's put that up on the slide here. And the qualities that she identified were courage, compassion, and connection. And when Michael and I started doing the thinking ahead, this week and the next 2, we thought, this does overlay pretty well on the love only, forgive everything, and to help remember who we are. So that's what we're going to be doing over the next few weeks. And today we're talking about the courage to love. Love even when it's hard to do. Our loving will change the world. And these truth principles are so lovely. Truth is simple and it's wonderful, but first it's probably going to piss us off because it's not exactly what we have learned how to do. We learned how to love lovable people and then try to get the other ones to fall in line. Anybody besides me want to do that? Okay. Well, we're not alone. So let me first and foremost on the slide, the definition of courage. And this is out of Brene Brown's book, The Gifts of Imperfection. And she said the root of the word courage is cor, the Latin word for heart. Courage originally was meant to speak one's mind by telling all in one's heart. But over time, courage has changed, and the definition that we have known more and more in our culture would be about her heroes and heroics. And, we need heroes, but we've lost touch with the idea that speaking honestly and openly about who we are, about what we're feeling, and that can be scary, right? Talk about how you're feeling, and about our experiences, whether they're good or bad, is a definition of courage. Heroics is about putting our life on the line. Ordinary courage is about putting our vulnerability. Ooh, is that one of those words that makes your toes curl a little bit? About being vulnerable? The courage to be imperfect. And in today's world, that's pretty extraordinary. We have a culture that seems to imply that there is a value to being perfectionistic. Anybody ever seen yourself as being a perfectionist? Besides, I guess I'm not the only one here. Wow. Well, I'll tell you what it feels like. It doesn't feel good. It's never a measuring up. In fact, one of the things I loved about her work was she talked about the difference between fitting in and belonging. Do you feel the difference? I know when I was in my early days, my teens and my early 20s, I worked so hard to fit in, all the while not feeling like I really fit in because there was that always in the back of my mind, if they only knew. And what was funny about that for me is I didn't even know what that was, but I just figured if they knew that, that I wouldn't fit in. But it wasn't that sense of comfort and belonging. And truly here, we surely have an ability to feel like we fit in and belong here in the Unity Church because we hear truth spoken here. We hear vulnerability shared. We hear hearts shared. And we have the courage as we grow into the different groups and everything that we foster here at Unity in Naperville and within the New Thought movement to be able to be perfect without being perfectionistic, perfect in our imperfections. Let's have another slide here. Brene Brown goes on, she said, wholehearted living is about engaging our lives from a place of worthiness. This is such a big old thing, this idea of being worthy. It means cultivating the courage, compassion, and connection to know I am enough. And yes, I am imperfect and vulnerable, and I'm sometimes afraid, but that doesn't change the truth that I'm also brave and worthy of love and belonging. And wholehearted living, which she discovered this concept. She came up with this concept of wholehearted living through the research, with her measuring stick. Wholehearted living is a lifetime, not a one-time choice. It is a process, and in fact, it's your journey of a lifetime. And how much we know and understand ourselves is critically important. But there's something that is even more essential, living a wholehearted life, and that really is the crux and the core of it, loving ourselves. The work starts there, because I can only give to you what I've got to give. And that was a hard one for me, because I didn't love myself a lot when I was growing up. I did have a lot of sense of needing to try to fit in. There was a point that happened along the way where I realized in this science of mind study, new thought study, all of a sudden one day I was like, I'm going to be a minister. Oh my God, I'm going to be a minister. And right after that, when I used to have to make presentations as a safety supervisor for a very large grocery chain, I would go to speak to some of the suits, the suits. Now, you have to appreciate being a safety supervisor in a grocery industry. They had a name for us. They called us the welcome wagon ladies. It's like, well, they'll get done, and then we'll get them out of the room, and then we can do real business. So there was a feeling superfluous and not quite enough. And in the midst of going through my science of mind studies, going through a lot of things I was going through, there was a point where I didn't feel like enough. And I began to feel very vulnerable. And I began to have panic attacks. Now, anyone who's ever had a panic attack knows what I'm talking about. It's like your body it kind of falls out from under you. It betrays you. It feels like your body is betraying you. First time it happened to me, I was sitting with a bunch of executives in a back room of a grocery store. It's 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm making a safety presentation, and I almost fainted. I had to sit down, put my head between my legs, and write it off as low blood sugar. But I knew better. And what began to happen for me is over time, I would even think about making a presentation, and I would start feeling terrified. What was I afraid of? I was afraid of being seen. There was that thing in the back that said, if they only knew me. So fast forward a lot of years later, I had to get through a lot of that. I actually founded a Toastmaster group so that we could all talk about how freaking terrified we were and get points for it. It was really a cool deal. We had a whole group of us that were terrified. It was great. Because they say, public speaking is second only to death by fire. So, I chose public speaking. And it's a tough one when you're going to be a minister that you can't stand up in public and actually speak to people. So I had to heal it along the way. And along the way, I had to do a lot of work around being able to learn how to love myself. But it just doesn't stop there. Once we've learned to love ourselves, we've got to really move on to how do we love other people when they're hard to love. And that's a tough one. Because, it's easy to do it here, easy to be who we are here in this church, sit around here, and I could look in every single one of your faces and feel connected. I love and feel connection to all of you, and I have a feeling we'd have that same kind of rapport. But put us out there on the expressway on a busy day, might be a different story, So it's like, are we living up to who we want to be on a Sunday morning? Sometimes it's like hard to walk the talk on the other 6.5 days. Heard about a stressed out woman who was tailgating a guy driving too fast. She was like zipping around. Clearly this woman needed to have his lane. She was going back and forth, weaving, going as fast as she could possibly be. Road rage, hitting the horn. This sounds like people in California, honk, honk, trying to get around, zipping around. And at some point when she stopped, she saw lights behind her. And it was a policeman pulling her over. And he pulled her over, and without telling her why, he said, license and registration. She gives them to him. He goes back and he ran her information. A few minutes later, he comes walking back up and he goes, well, I see I made a mistake. I'm sorry, but I just have to tell you, I've been following you for a while. And I saw your What Would Jesus Do license plate holder, and I saw your Love Thy Neighbor and Follow Me to Church bumper sticker, and I figured the car had to be stolen. Next slide. This is the right one, right? Yeah, good. Okay. So this is a quote out of Science of Mind magazine that I clipped a long time ago, and I loved it. The ancients tell us that we are made in the image and likeness of God and that God is love. When we drop the false self and live from love, we experience our own divinity and oneness. So how can we do that more? Well, there's libraries. We have books. We have filled with teachings and practices and philosophies that seek the way to the answer. But no one can open that door but us. It has something to do with willingness, something to do with authenticity, something to do with vulnerability. We can't be open to love and guarding our hearts or our reputations at the same time. There is no managing others' perceptions in the presence of love. Next slide. I have a statue of this guy in my backyard. How many of you know who that is? Anybody know who that might be? St. Francis of Assisi, right? A lot of you have probably heard his prayer of St. Francis. I was listening to Wayne Dyer the other day, which is what prompted me to have this today. And Wayne Dyer had taken a group of people to Assisi, and they had spent time there where St. Francis had been. And he's the one who wrote that beautiful, or he had the beautiful poem, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there's hatred, let me sow love. Where there's injury, pardon. Where there's doubt, faith. Where there's despair, hope. Where there's darkness, light. Where there's sadness, joy, and it goes on. And Wayne Dyer spoke about that. He said, this isn't just a prayer, and it's not a religious statement. It's a beautiful technology for teaching us to bring the presence of higher spiritual, divine organizing power to the intelligence of every energy that is not of this source. Those energies of hatred, of anger, fear, worry, and we need it all more in the world than we ever did before. So in just a few minutes, I want to share with you about St. Francis because he was iconic. He was born in 1181, time of the Crusades. He actually did some informing during the Crusades to try to lobby for peace. And he was only 44 years old when he passed away in 1226. But he is one of the most venerated figures in Christianity. And he is known for his commitment. What's the thing you remember about St. Francis? What do you always associate? Animals, right? Compassion in animals. And his peaceful, beautiful nature, his dedication to serving the poor and marginalized people. Interestingly enough, I'm pointing at Kim Char, he was also the person who came up with the very first nativity that he actually had with real animals. The first time I ever went over to Kim Char and Cindy's house, their dog Gucci was sitting in the cradle that had been used here at Christmas for the Christmas scene. I walk in, there's a dog in a crib. I'm like, oh my God, okay. Must be a New Thought thing, right? But he was born into a wealthy family, and for a while he lived a life of privilege. But then there was civil war and illness, hardship. He was imprisoned, very tough times for him. But during that time, he had a mystical experience. He renounced his worldly possessions, and he committed his life as a devotion to God. And from that point on, he saw all creatures as brothers and sisters, advocating for respect and generosity. So that prayer has been widely recognized. But the interesting thing I found out yesterday while I was researching this, he didn't write it. He didn't even know about that prayer. That prayer didn't show up until he died in 1223, but that prayer began to be distributed in 1912 in a Catholic primer. And then somebody got their hands on it, and during World War I, they actually printed it on cards and put his picture on the other side when they would give it out to the soldiers in World War I. So despite a 700-year time gap, that person's persona is associated with that prayer. What kind of a legacy is that? What kind of a wonderful legacy to have the truth of your being be the fact of your life. And I began to think about that because I'd like to know that I would have that kind of a connection, that if people who really didn't know me and they saw my acts and then found out I was a minister wouldn't go, what? They go, oh, of course. And I think the thing might be true for you too. You know, there's a couple of things we have, and we're going to conclude with what I want to have as a giveaway, because I like to have something that we can do during the week that we can enforce the lessons that we're having here during our week, so we can try it out in the laboratory of our own homes. Sound good to you? The courage, compassion, and connection are the qualities of wholehearted living, but I would add one, and that's curiosity. Curiosity is a very essential quality, because what curiosity does, regardless of the situation, regardless of what low state we might be in, if we can induce curiosity into the situation, it will literally bring our vibration up because it's energy. And so I wanted to know, what could I do to increase my receptivity? Because I, like you, have two things I will never be without. One of them is a hero heart, and the other is a monkey mind. My hero heart says, go out there and love, and my monkey mind says, you shouldn't do that, don't listen to that. So part of the work we have to do is not just to try to do the prayer of Assisi, because at one point I tried to work with this a while ago, and I was having trouble with it, folks, I got to tell you. But what I remembered is one of my teachers said, you know, whenever you're having trouble with embodying a quality, put the word willing in front of it. So what I came up with for myself, and what I'm sharing with you today, and there's handouts that you'll have out in the lobby, is a way that we can take that prayer of Assisi, the energy of St. Francis, and take it into our own lives when we're working on loving everybody, loving even when it's hard to do. Let's go ahead and put that up. What I call it is my courageous prayer. And I'm going to invite you to join me in saying these words and see how they fit for you. Because the idea of being willing to perceive things differently can change our world. So what I have here is, I think of us as a unique expression of absolute love, intelligence, and perfection of spirit, because that's the truth about who we are. We are the am that I am. So let's look at this, and if you're willing, read along with me. Okay? As a unique expression of the absolute love, intelligence, and perfection of spirit, the I am that I am willing to be an instrument of peace. Where I perceive hatred, I am willing to be love. Where I perceive injury, I am willing to be forgiven. Where I perceive doubt, I'm willing to be faith. Where I perceive despair, I am willing to be hope. Where I perceive darkness, I am willing to be light. Where I perceive sadness, I am willing to be joy. From the altitude of absolute love and Spirit's perfection together, I am willing to be consoling and to be consoled. I am willing to be understanding and to be understood. I am willing to be loving and to be loved. I am willing to be both giver and receiver. I am willing to be both forgiver and forgiven. And I am willing to be born anew to perpetual peace through the renewing of my mind. And so it is. Amen. Let's take that into meditation.
So as we join together right now within, I invite you to just let yourself be present in this now moment. And you may wish to close your eyes and just taking a nice deep breath and holding it and slowly releasing, knowing that there is only one presence, one power, and one intelligence in this life, God. I accept the knowingness this morning that I am willing to be loved and loving. I'm willing to be open and receptive to knowing that Spirit is moving through me in each and every moment, in every way, in every day. providing for me, uplifting me, and supporting me in this process. For there is already that within me that knows perfect love, because I am perfect love. I am willing to be aware of that which I need to know in each and every situation where I may not be practicing this for myself and for others. I am open and receptive to God's guidance and this living intelligence within me that leads, that guides, that directs me in every situation in my life. And I know through my willingness, as I remain open and receptive to God's living Spirit of truth that moves through me, I am led, guided, and directed to know what I need to know, to believe what I need to believe, to do what I need to do. And I am grateful for the guidance and the awareness, knowing that this awareness builds my consciousness so that I can greater love myself and more greatly love each and every person around me. So I accept that this intelligence, this presence, this knowingness is moving through me right now, already uplifting me, already providing for me, and already supporting me in each and every way. I am grateful. For this I give great thanks by saying thank you, God. Thank you, Spirit. Thank you, Divine Intelligence. Knowing this is done and complete, I release this word right now, turning it over to Spirit, letting it be done as I know it already is. I let it be so by saying, and so it is.